all around our town, in Delaware. And I just got so scared for like what could happen to them or like what people would like try. So yeah, so just like really scared. I think being at our like the People's Hobbies Collective meeting and like on this call and talking to a bunch of student action folks has made me feel like the energy that can come out of this and the opportunity, but I think also just still really scared.
My name is Emily. Can you guys hear me?
Can hear you.
Yeah.
I've heard a lot of people talking about, people who voted for Hillary Clinton, a lot of people talking about how we need to wait and see and we need to give Trump a chance. And I've had a lot of trouble arguing with them, the people who don't think that protesting in the streets is productive, who think that we're just disrupting the peace, and who have actually also said that people have been fabricating these stories about hate speech and violence. So I just want to know if anyone else here has any ideas about how to talk to people who are just saying, let's wait and see.
Yeah, I mean, that's actually, this is John Arlt from Central Michigan Action, and that was kind of the focus of our, for Alma College Action and Central Michigan Action is to not just speak against Trump, but to speak against hate speech. And so what we've been pushing, people are saying, oh, let's give him a chance. He's got one black dude in his cabinet, you know, he's not racist, he's got a black friend, basically. What we've been emphasizing is, no, according to university guidelines, this is hate speech. So what we're actually doing is delivering a letter to the presidents of both of the colleges in our network saying, we need you to recognize that Mike Pence engages in hate speech against the LGBTQ plus community. We need you to recognize that Donald Trump has engaged in hate speech against, against people of color, against immigrants, against Muslims. We need our school to recognize that this is not about an election, but about what's been said and what's been done and how that's empowered that individual, those individual acts of discrimination. And, you know, then they either say, you're right, we'll speak out against it, boom, we win, or they stay silent and we just hit them with it again and again and again. So in terms of like going back to what they have said, like, nope, this is what he said. Nope, this is what he said. That's kind of been that's our approach for it. And it's helping with the dialogue, I think, in both our colleges.
I think that's a great way to utilize your time and to utilize the resources that you have as university students and as people associated with the university. So thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
So next, I'd like to turn over to Gianna, who's going to be giving us a bit of an overview about the current political situation. So Gianna, if you'd like to speak.
Yeah. First, I want to thank you all for being on this call. I'm Gianna. I'm one of the organizers of Student Action. And I think similar to what Joe said, Tuesday's night's results were very devastating. And I think for me, my immediate reaction was to fear for the safety of those in my family. They're undocumented and have criminal records. But right now, what I'm feeling is anger. Like angry at the fact that the fear that I felt on Tuesday is the fear that many folks are feeling across the country, right? Fearing the separation of their families in ways that we never thought was possible before. But this happened for a reason. And I kind of want to ground us in the political context and the political moment that we're in. Throughout this election, we have seen a rise in far-right forces, both in the U.S., not only just in the U.S., but also globally, that have garnered momentum with the rhetoric of hate and are pushing for aggressive policy platforms that will further structural racism, income inequality, and kind of stature reform. But we have to remember this election was always about choosing the political train to fight on. However, Tuesday's election has Trump confirmed what no one on the left was fully prepared for, including our organization. But we still aren't fully clear as of right now what Trump's presidency could mean in terms of policy. We've seen that he's backtracked on many commitments. This week there was an article announcing that he said that he would no longer repeal Obamacare. However, we do know that there's a lot at stake, more than we ever thought that was imaginable. And we'll need to engage in defensive fights around climate, immigration, and the budget to protect policies that we have installed that are now threatened. And one of those, for example, is DACA. We can expect an increase in attacks on immigrants and community colors, which need to be protected. But throughout all of this, what we do know is that in this election, it did show that the neoliberal status quo is dead, and along with it, the Democratic Party that fought to maintain it. It is in this critical political moment that we must not lose ourselves in these defensive fights, to keep our eyes on the prize of building a long-term strategy that fights for a progressive future. In crisis, there is opportunity, and right now, the Democratic Party is more ready than ever to be uprooted and placed with our people. I was in Nevada at the time during the Tuesday elections, working with students and community members, and we saw some of the most progressive down-ballot folks win, and also the most progressive propositions around the bill. We also know in Minnesota, there was a really great down-ballot campaign. And so that's what we have to move our attention to. But we also know that we need to build a strategy that organizes white working class folks, many who are feeling real economic pain and looking for solutions to the decrease in standard of living, and who have, in the past 2 decades, only been organized by the right. Now is the time that we step into this role through our organization. And I want to ground this in something. Like, I know a lot of what we're feeling right now in our gut is tension and fear of the unknown, but we have to know that in moments like this is when we can take risks that we've never done before. And by doing just that, by not hiding in the tension that we feel in our guts, we can make politically impossible become the possible. And that's like what I'm ready to do and ground you all in, right? It's taking the fear and the anger that we're feeling into action and building what we can never have done before. And so that's what this meeting is about, and that's like what we're going to continue to be moving forward, like in the work that we do. Thank you.
Awesome. I can take it from
Cool.
there.
I think Johnson.
Also, if you're not currently speaking, if you could just mute. Sounds like someone's at like a basketball game or something. So hi y'all, my name is Dylan Amlin and I'm the field director for Student Action. And yeah, as Gianna said, we're really trying to figure out like what this moment means, even as we're all just kind of grieving and like trying to figure out like what is going on in the world. We really like don't want to waste the moment that we're in because you know, while there's a lot of really bad stuff happening, we also need to figure out what we can do strategically to move forward. And so as Student Action, we have had a lot of conversation as a national staff and have been talking a lot with People's Action staff to really just start to figure out what's going on and what we can do about it. And I think like after a couple of conversations as a staff, we brought together some of our national leadership on Friday and talked through a plan which we're laying out on this call today. And that's grounded basically in our analysis of like what we can really do in this moment, where we obviously see across the country, like millions of people are rising up and like taking the streets and demanding that we do something, right? We're also obviously seeing a really terrifying rise of like hate incidents across the country. Joe was talking about this earlier, right? But like as an organization that frankly like does not have a full analysis of like what a strategic path forward is, like we still need to act in this moment. And so we think that there are a couple of like key things that we need to be doing right now as a national organization to like meet this moment. And so the first is to like take action. I think like even though, you know, a lot of protests that are happening don't have like a clear objective, like people translating their anger and grief into like action in the streets is really important. Like that is a really critical first step and we should be participating in that. But what we really want to talk about on this call is how we can engage in these kinds of actions and also set ourselves up to be building for the long term. So we want to bring thousands of young people into organizations, and we want to start actually moving those folks around campaigns that we're already running. We want to encourage people to start campaigns to really translate this energy into long-term organizing. I know some folks around the country are already thinking about how to connect these Tuesday actions to work that they're already doing. Folks in Illinois are part of the campaign for fighting for free college in the state of Illinois, and a part of that campaign is fighting for an access bill that would get financial aid for undocumented folks, undocumented students in Illinois, right? And so with their action, they want to translate this anti-Trump energy into a really specific campaign that is already happening on the ground. And so we want to figure out ways in which people can do that on their campuses, and want everyone on this call to be thinking about like how they can relate the current crisis to work that they're already doing, because we don't want to lose that, right? And so our overall theory of change and what we want to be moving folks across the country to be thinking about is a process for what is essentially called absorption, right? If there's all this energy right now, how do we translate that into sustained organizing and continued organizing? So the path forward essentially that we're framing tonight is essentially around taking national action, like using this movement moment and having students on all of our campuses walk out or do some kind of action or rally on their campuses on November 15th. There are also going to be a set of actions across the country that are based around No Doppel, but I think No Doppel and Stop Trump are kind of, I know in Chicago, they've literally combined in many cases. So we're going to be taking action on the 15th. And as a part of that action, we really want folks to have something set up to absorb folks into. So we're going to be talking about moving folks into some kind of teach-in or training on your campus so that you can immediately get people plugged into the work, right? And then, we really are just like every minute trying to figure out new ways in which we can act strategically in this moment. So as a next step from teach-ins and training, we want to start thinking about more higher risk and strategic direct actions. So folks in Iowa, who I know are on the call, did an action with folks from our affiliate Iowa Citizens for Community Improvement on Friday, where they did an action on one of Trump's biggest donors in Iowa, who is also very much connected to the issues around higher education in the state and issues around clean water and the Bakken pipeline. And so that was a way in which they were able to immediately translate energy into something with a real target, right? And so we want to think about what those opportunities are across the country. And the toolkit that we're going to share in a second, we're starting to come up with some of those ideas. I know that a lot of organizations are looking at how we can basically be using this moment to actually put pressure on the Democratic Party to change its game. The Democratic Party lost this election by ignoring progressives, right? And so we want to figure out what we can do in this moment to move them. And then for everyone, and I think this is going to look different based on y'all's individual needs as organizations and what it looks like on your campus. But we want everybody to be thinking about how you're plugging people into roles in your organization, which is obviously hugely important. And then because, like I said, this is not a full action plan, we're not even fully sure what Trump's presidency means. It seems like every day he's coming out with a new surprise and he's backtracking off of one of his horrible claims, or he's holding to it. So it's really going to take the next couple of weeks to figure out a strategic way forward. So we want to basically continue calls like this, and we want y'all to be having these conversations in your organizations and campuses as we start to get more information. So we'll be scheduling more calls like this and more specific leadership calls for folks who have the capacity to really start to think about a long-term strategy. I want to just hold there and see if there are questions that folks have, either about the overall strategy or maybe it brings up questions for you about what to do on your campus.
Hi. I'm Courtney. I'm from Bates College. In truth, like I've been more involved with like climate action folks and like people playing our campus walkout, since that's like the organizing background I come from. And I just wanted to share some of the concerns that some of my friends from that group have had. A lot of them, like people of color and people don't have like privileges that I have, of like being a white person, heterosexual, etc. Something that our campus like plans Google Doc says, for instance, a quotation that came out of Pacheca, the movement, they said, quote, "We shouldn't focus on Trump anymore. We should see this as a call to unity for building and working towards the future we want, not just against Trump. If we focus on him, we give him more power." And in light of that, why a lot of my organizer friends at other schools have been concerned about the Stop Trump movement is that we need to be organizing mostly against these bad things that he represents, which I think someone else mentioned at the beginning of the call, like, racism, sexism, etc., and not organizing like against the man himself, because as we've been seeing, he does do surprising things, but we do know some concrete things about him, like his stances on, for instance, like people of color, Muslim people, etc. And I think that while we name this movement Stop Trump, I'm concerned about, and maybe some other people might be concerned about, the framework of action that we're going to take in terms of not being organizing to the will of and at the will of this man who does one new thing one day or the next, but like organizing against these structural systems. I have plenty of friends that have expressed concern that a lot of these like white folks who have been woken up by this election, getting out there and saying "not my president" or "stop Trump," are not willing to say things like Black Lives Matter and "I condemn racism" and "I support my allies and my friends who are people of color, who are queer, etc." And so I think that like what's really important, what I take away from that, is that when we organize, we can call ourselves Stop Trump, since that harnesses a lot of the anger and might engage like new folks that now want to participate. But at our core, what we need to focus on and what we need to stress to people is that we're not necessarily organizing against the man himself, but against the things that he stands for. And so that's like the main like idea that I have, and the concern that like a lot of people that I've been hearing about have about like this Stop Trump action that we're all going to be taking.
Word, yeah. So I would say like the reasoning behind, we had a conversation about like hashtags and just sort of like how we were framing these things. And the main reason that we like chose Stop Trump rather than a like unique hashtag was that like our main goal here is to really capture the political moment. So I think like our thinking behind these actions overall is that like we really focus, like Stop Trump is how people are coming in, but we really focus on like the positive vision of the world that we want to see. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that when we get into the toolkit. But does anyone else have any like tensions that they're feeling or questions about like the overall strategy?
I think that made a lot of sense, and that was some of our concern and why we have really emphasized like what he's said, what he's done, and we're going to translate that into a campaign to sort of hold the line in terms of pushing our school on discriminatory stuff. And I do think that it really makes a lot of sense to focus on not just the individual, but also, so I think that pushing the positive stuff is going to be really critical, and we have to do that like almost from the get-go with these rallies. Like we need to stay, it's not just about like one of the first rallies, we need to be emphasizing, we got you here with Stop Trump, that's great. We're not just focusing on him, he's a bad man, but on the shit that he's done, we need to stop the harm that's going to happen to people. And once we've ensured some safety, we are going to push forward with this positive vision. I think if we do it in that order from the day one, from Tuesday, I think that's going to be really, really helpful. I think then we can capture the moment, hold the line, and still move forward.
Can I jump in for a second? Yeah. I just want to say that I think that like that this sort of vision of moving beyond just talking about Trump is definitely in the messaging, and we're coming up with, if I'm not mistaken, Dylan, like a sort of messaging doc to supply people with, but it is on the event already. And I think it's kind of up to local events to sort of formulate their own demands for concrete change on that level. And I know that here in Illinois, what we're doing is there's a bill that would let undocumented students access like state scholarships and grants at the state level that is being voted on Wednesday. So at our rally, we're going to be calling on the legislators to like actively work against Trump's agenda by passing this bill. And there's also like a clean power bill that is also around. So we'll actually like be passing out like lists with the numbers of the key legislators and having people call them at the rallies. And I think that like the more that local sort of actions can find ways like this to link like working against Trump's agenda to like actual concrete things that you can demand, I think it's kind of hard to do that on a national level. But I'm definitely down with that vision long term, and I think we are super committed to that.
Cool. Thank you.
I also wanted to add in something. This is Agua from Chicago Student Action. Can you guys hear me?
Yep.
Awesome. Okay, so I am an undocumented student. I am over at Illinois Tech, and it's been really hard since Tuesday. We have not confirmed, obviously, the names because the families are in hiding, but we are to believe that at least 7 undocumented students have already taken their own lives in the Chicagoland area. And something that I've been talking about with the immigrant allies that could be applied at a national level is although not all cities in the U.S. are deeming themselves sanctuary cities, we can put pressure on our universities to stand up as sanctuary campuses. So there are some petitions circulating for a variety of campuses. So there's one for UW-Madison, there's one for UIUC, and that's a template that I can send over to Spencer, and like the Illinois team can send over to the other states. But the language is really easy. ICE has a memorandum that basically says that they cannot, come into schools. So basically, you would just have to put pressure on your president, your provost, basically the people who oversee the diversity office, and then the head of your campus police, to not allow ICE to, or to not negotiate with ICE or to comply with them if they do come to campus seeking out students for deportations at a certain point.
Awesome. Thank you. Yeah. And in just a couple of minutes, we're going to share our toolkit, and it's like a living and constantly growing document. So anything that y'all have as resources, we're really looking for. So I just want to take a minute and get some commitments. We've got a lot of folks on this call, and right now, I believe this is pretty up to date, but right before this call, we had actions committed. I'm just going to run through the list at UC Santa Cruz, at UIC in Chicago, UIUC in Illinois as well. We have a page at Roosevelt University for the University of Chicago, for Bates College, for SMCC, also in Maine, for MECHA in Maine, USM in Maine, and then moving on to Michigan, we've got events for Central Michigan University, at Alma College, at St. Cloud State in Minnesota. We've got something going on at the University of Buffalo in New York. And those are all of the events, the event pages that we have had submitted. So if you're committing to an action, and I didn't call your college's name, if we could just run through and get commitments for action.
We're still confirming the details, but Illinois Tech is going to make sure that something happens on Tuesday. We just don't know what time.
Okay, awesome.
I also know Roosevelt and Northwestern in Chicago are having meetings, not actions, but at least Northwestern has a Facebook event and Roosevelt will soon.
Cool.
I also, last time I talked for University of Nevada, Reno, last time I talked to Dean and Jesse, they were considering having something down too. So up in there.
This is Miguel in Colorado. There's an emergency meeting happening on the CU Boulder campus tomorrow that I'm organizing that is going to lead into walkouts on, we're leaning towards Wednesday because that's when the Sanctuary campus walkouts are happening, but potentially also be Tuesday. So yeah, that is confirmed.
Awesome.
So at Bowdoin, we are planning on having a sort of emergency meeting in the next couple of days. I know that I've heard from some friends at SWAT who are walking out on Wednesday. Apparently there's also a big walkout planned for Wednesday with about 80 colleges signed up for that. So I think we're talking about a walkout and we're going to see how exactly it fits on our campus, and we're having a meeting of organizers in the next couple of days.
Awesome. Any other folks on the call who we haven't named? No? Okay, awesome. Well, if you do have other folks who want to get involved, I know we've got a lot of schools that couldn't be on the call, but it looks like are going to be sprouting actions in New Hampshire, Pennsylvania, and Michigan. But if you do have an action, there's information on the Facebook page for how to basically get it signed up on the national website. Cool. Well, I think then we can jump into the toolkit, which Emily is going to start talking about, and we've got to share that with y'all. So 1 second. Emily, do you have that link ready?
I don't.
I got it. So for folks who are at the computer, I just added a link to the chat that you should be able to open. And for folks on the phone, I hope some of you are near a computer, but we will verbalize all the things that we're talking about. And yeah, Emily, do you want to kick off talking about the toolkit?
Yeah, so the toolkit can kind of be a way to, for all of us to be organizing our actions in whether it's a different target or a different demand, things like that, different circumstances, but so that they're connected and cohesive, and can also be useful for folks that this might be their first action that they're planning. So we talk about how the first thing we want to do is have our action, have our walkout, and then follow it by teach-in, so that we are engaging the folks that come to our action in organizing, and kind of do some a mini organizing training, so that we can bring them into our vision and our organizing around other issues. So if you scroll down to how to plan a walkout, the first thing that many people have already done is to create the Facebook event for your specific local action, and make sure, and you can actually copy all the basic information from the national event. So really the event kind of makes itself. And we just got those commitments. And then we want to make sure that we invite as many people on Facebook to the national event and to the local event. And the reason that we want to invite everyone to the national event as well as your local event is so that that event kind of goes viral or starts to trend and people see it all over the country, and can kind of add to that event. And then another good kind of turnout and recruitment strategy is just to post it to any sort of social justice related pages or groups, listservs at your school or at other schools. And Yeah, so then turnout, even though this event and action is really based on kind of energy of the moment and people kind of coming out on their own and acting on their energy, you do want to kind of make sure that we have some basic turnout so that you have a crowd at, you know, wherever your walkout meets, so that you can plug those people in. So a good way to do that is just to kind of have a turnout document that runs, have the people that you are organizing this action with, make commitments about how many people they will recruit. So like just some quick organizer's math, you could say like, hey, we want 50 people at our rally at the end of the walkout. That means we need to have 100 people say they're gonna come, and we need to talk to 200 people. And then being able to kind of divvy that up so that you're able to find where those people are come from. Dylan, can I swing it to you around messaging and program?
Yeah, totally. So if folks could click on this link that says messaging doc, we have been working with folks over the past couple of days to try and come up with like a coherent narrative that we, you know, want to run through these actions and want people to be able to tap into both like in their actions and also in the teach-ins and like meetings that follow, so that we're actually building in again a progressive vision of the future into these actions, and we aren't just talking about all of the bad things, right? And we're not staying in a reactive place. So this is a messaging doc that we created that is both like thinking about the pathways forward and what we need to do, and also in its like within those things really lays out like what a progressive platform looks like. So folks are moved away from a place of like this current moment where like people of color, immigrants, LGBTQ people, women are really like under attack, to thinking about the like progressive vision of society in which those people actually are not just like, you know, under like free from like terrifying danger, but like what does a society look like where people can actually thrive, right? And not getting stuck in this place of let's just fight for a world where everything is extremely horrible, which is really, I think, eventually demobilizing for people. So again, like obviously we need to combat like Trump's awful policies and the sort of after effects of his presidency. But we need to stay grounded in this long-term vision. So what we've laid out here is essentially like stop Trump's worst policies and defend those targeted by his policies. We definitely have a clear idea around a couple of things like immigration, healthcare, and budget, but like we're going to be working to figure out exactly what that looks like in the coming days. Advancing a vision and program of racial, gender, economic justice that is grounded in really material demands and solidarity. So you can look more at that stuff. Taking back electoral politics at every level and really addressing corporate power in our electoral system, particularly in the Democratic Party, which is a lot of what got us into this mess. Confronting the climate crisis head on. We have this as a separate bullet because this is one of the areas where a Trump presidency, especially on an international level, is really a big threat, and we need an effective strategy. And then finally, and I think this is a place where like from the work that we've done to develop analysis as student action and in coordination with people's action, I think this is a place where we really need to like be the lead, is really rejecting Trump's nationalism and working toward a vision of like a positive, progressive global society and having international solidarity. I think this is going to be a huge issue over the next 4 years. And if folks don't really know what the alternative to being xenophobic and kicking immigrants out is, we're not going to be able to fight for the future that we need, right? So anyway, folks can spend more time looking over this, but basically, I apologize, we were not able to put together a full template for like programs and things like that, but that's what we're going to have certainly by tomorrow, is essentially like a sample program for what you could do with the action. For folks who have done actions before, you definitely want some space to have a couple of speakers. I think having people who are really directly impacted right now talk about their experience is really critical. And then again, having some space in that program to talk about like what we're actually fighting for. And so in terms of messaging, you know, you want to make space to like make signs. We'll have some like kind of example slogans and stuff for folks to tap into, and also have chants that really like communicate that message. So there's a starting like chant ideas list, but also really want folks to add to that. And if you've heard good chants, like we want these to be kind of living documents. And then final things on messaging. So we'll have a full like social media toolkit tomorrow with like sample tweets. We're going to be using the hashtag Stop Trump for like to actually trend. That's a trending hashtag, and to really engage with the overall conversation. We're going to be using hashtag Student Action as a way of like connecting all of our actions, and definitely using hashtag No Doppel. Because this is also a day against the Dakota Access Pipeline. So we'll have more on that. And then by tomorrow, we'll also have a sample press release, and we'll be sending out a national press advisory through People's Action. So we can actually try and get real press for our events, and for y'all to be able to like modify your own press release and get that out. And those, again, those resources will be in the folder by tomorrow that we'll share you on. Emily, are you good to take it back?
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, so I think that about covers the toolkit. And now I think we can just have space for questions about all of that we just talked about.
I definitely am curious because a lot of our actions are just happening here kind of organically. They're just kind of popping up without time for us to actually be the ones to necessarily organize it. But there's also not really people running it per se. So I'm curious if we can get some language in there on how to kind of come into an already formed action and just apply some level of organization to it. Or if it's already in there and I'm missing it.
Yeah, that's a good flag, because I think that there are a lot of kind of organically happening actions, either ones on Wednesday or ones that have already happened. Could we maybe add a section about that in the toolkit, Dylan?
Yeah, that sounds good. And Danny, what have y'all done thus far to do that?
Done thus far to do what? Sorry.
To like use those actions to like, I mean, like the immediate things that come to mind for me is like, you can still go to an action that's not yours and like petition and like invite people to things, right? But what have y'all?
So what I did at the action, the last action, that was a rather large one 2 nights ago. I made a bunch of sign-up sheets and basically got in touch with the people that put up the Facebook event. They weren't necessarily organizing it, just made sure it was okay with them. And I showed up with a few hundred people worth of sign-up sheets, and we filled them all up. We got several hundred names, numbers, emails. That was really effective. I also met up at the action with some of people that I know already that organize, and kind of tried to lead it to, we were trying to get it to go to the highway. The action was supposed to just be a rally. We got them to start marching, and we made some effort to bring it to the highway, but ultimately it was the group decided against it. So that's about how far we went.
Cool. Well, if we can have more time for questions, but I want to cover a couple other pieces in the toolkit. So under messaging, we've got a piece on creating an action, and a couple of questions that we want folks to think about are like first, the question around having a target and demands. Again, like I think generally an action is a lot more effective if it's clear who you're asking to do something, and it's clear that you have something that you want them to do, right? That's a little hard when we're broadly protesting the election of the president. So folks are doing like different things, I know, to to essentially create their own target and demand out of the situation. Spencer was talking about what the folks are doing at UIUC in terms of like connecting it to an existing campaign and like doing some work to target their representatives through that. And John mentioned earlier about the students in Central Michigan who are essentially putting a demand on their president. So that's something for everyone to be thinking about, is like, if there's a way for you to do that, I think that's great. Some of these actions are not going to have that, and I think this is one of the times when it's actually okay, as long as you have like a really solid program. The next thing is just thinking about action roles. So we've got a link to some like traditional role descriptions and sort of what people do. And then there's a doc that you could actually copy and like use for your own turnout, and also thinking about roles. So you can click on those things, and the second tab on one of those documents is a set of action roles. And so even in these kind of like sporadic actions, we really want people to be thinking about how they fill roles in terms of like having an actual solid program, right? Having some marshals to direct people, make sure folks are like moving as they're supposed to be and are safe. Having some folks designated to negotiate with police or campus security if that's an issue. Having folks assigned to like lead chants and maintain energy, to deal with any props, right? Folks to be point on social media and talking with the press. And then I think a big thing at all of these actions is going to be people to like collect names and phone numbers and emails from all the people who come, right? So that's a big thing that we want to make sure folks are doing at these actions, collecting contact information. And then what we really want to push folks to do as you're having these actions is already have next steps set up for the people who are attending. So what are you going to ask people to do at the end of this event that is like immediate enough and is an ask that they can make? And so the suggestion that we're making is for folks to essentially host teach-ins or trainings that really bring people in. A lot of these folks are going to be really new to organizing, ideally. So having a really open teach-in event that you can direct people to really do a lot of what we've been talking about on this call, like getting people's feelings out, allowing them to connect this current moment to like a political vision of what like our society, could be, and lay out some of the steps that we need to, combat Trump, combat his agenda, and actually move toward the world that we want. So folks that are already in existing organizations with campaigns, you should be thinking about what kind of event can like move someone from I'm really mad about Trump to like I want to organize and I want to fight, on this campaign, right? Some folks may need to think more deeply about what their long-term steps look like, but we want everyone to be thinking about, how these events can move folks. So we're going to have in the next couple of days, like a PowerPoint presentation, some like, resources for folks to do some political education, like some really easy to read articles that you can use in your groups that help folks really digest and understand the political moment. But the really big thing is like getting folks into a place that is like the next step toward like becoming a part of an organization, right? So again, we're going to have some resources like that soon. And then the third sort of piece of like what we're talking about as an immediate strategy is using the momentum from this first action and like the engagement of folks in the second to translate that into like strategic escalated action. So I mentioned the folks in Iowa who did an action on one of Trump's big donors. We're considering actions with allies around Democratic Party establishment. There may be corporate targets who are strategic to move on. And y'all may already have actions that you need to do as a part of your existing campaigns. And so maybe it's just about thinking about how you can think about those as a next step in fighting Trump, right? But that's part of the strategizing that we're doing over the next couple of days. And you can see from this section that like, this is a piece that we're really like every second, like we're getting new information on and trying to figure out. But this is the kind of action that we want folks to be taking in the next couple of weeks, right? And then the big piece that I have down here is for folks who are not already a part of existing campus organizations, like to start thinking about how to build long-term organization out of this event, right? And I think a big reason that we want folks to do that don't actually have existing organizations is like we want bodies on campuses that can start thinking about like long-term strategy. And if we don't have coherent organizations that are actually tied to a vision and not just repeated action, right? We're not going to be able to win, and we're not going to be able to do the sophisticated work that we need to win. So what I want to like invite everybody on this call into the process of and to start thinking about is like how we translate this work into long-term strategy, right? So I can add the actual contact information in here. But Aija Nimar Anirudh, who is the Director of Student Action, who should be on this call, is going to be leading folks on a process of like thinking through long-term strategy. And like the big benefit of being a national organization in this situation is that we're connected to a lot of like national policy people who are doing a lot of work that I don't understand at all to really understand, you know, what is Trump really capable of? What are the defensive fights that we're really going to have to put energy into? And like, what are the openings of this election? And how can we really, again, like take over the Democratic Party? And like, what can we really move even as, you know, some things may be shitty for a while. So want to like engage everybody in that process. I think we'll have a follow-up national call like this because we want as many people as possible to be like engaged in that conversation, but are also going to be creating materials to like get from folks, like to get folks to be having these conversations on their campuses so that we're really engaging college students in like a much more sophisticated process, if that makes sense. And then so folks who are not like currently engaged with student action that want like training and resources, like that's also what we're going to be developing resources for and adding national staff capacity toward is like helping folks translate this moment into like actual long-term organizing. So I promise this is part of the call where I generally shut up. Like do folks have questions about any of those elements of the toolkit or like ideas about like resources that would be most helpful? Thoughts about the strategy overall?
I had one question, Dylan. So our community meeting or our emergency meeting is going to have both students and community members. So like the plugin that we're doing for students are the walkouts, and then for the community members we have a separate plugin. And part of that is like making Boulder like a sanctuary city and having them like take on roles like contacting churches and stuff. I have a question in terms of, because I think this is an opportune time to like move the Democratic Party. Is there like a way that if some folks have shown interest in that in my area, if there is a strategic like ask of representatives or like senators in our area to do that, or if you have thoughts on that?
Yeah, we should like start a thread on this, but I know from conversations that I've heard, like there's really real conversations about basically coming in with a set of demands for like all of our Democratic officials and basically being like, look, you're either for all of these things, these progressive principles, or you're out. And so, yeah, we should like start a thread offline about that. But I think we could definitely help y'all like articulate sort of what those demands should be and how to do that.
I think this is Brianna, real quick. I think the lobby is running on Mike Madigan, who's like our Democratic Party Boston speaker in the House here in Illinois, to like support Keith Ellison as DP chair. So that may be one of the asks to be making to people like short term who are legislators or party officials.
Dope. Yeah, other questions or thoughts from folks? No.
This is Theo.
Oh.
Just wanted to check in on when that toolkit will be out.
Yeah, so we'll send out the link to the toolkit as it is right now, and then there's a couple of like linked resources that aren't fully complete, but I think we should have like a completed set of most of the materials by like tomorrow.
Sounds good.
Yeah, no worries. Any other last questions folks have?
I'll butt in again. It's more of a tension, but I do have a question on how to deal with it. We have been having a lot of, arguments in the middle of our actions between like the very radical groups and the much less radical groups. It kind of came to a head at our last action when some of the anarchists started burning a flag at our action, and some other people put it out. And then there was like a 10-minute argument that really hurt our momentum over whether or not we should be burning flags. So I guess my question is how we can best bring these groups together into one place so that we don't lose either the more radical people or the less radical people.
Yeah, I'm down to just open it up to folks. My immediate reaction is like, you're gonna lose some people. Like if you're going toward an actual vision of something, you're probably gonna alienate some people. Like I don't see a world in which burning flags is strategic personally, but yeah, other folks' thoughts on like how you're gonna deal with that or have dealt with it.
Can anyone hear me?
Yep.
Hello? Is this working?
Yep.
Okay. This is saying it's muted, but anyway, I think that's a big problem that's been happening to a lot of people, especially with this, a lot of kind of sectarian disputes, etc. And I think something that can be unifying at rallies and such is to really be aggressive in telling these groups when there is tension, really framing how dire the situation that we're in right now is, and how if we're having arguments about whether you should burn a fucking flag or not is really necessary in the time that we're having. I think that it should really be stressed to these groups that a discussion on that is both immature and out of place at a rally such as that. So I think framing to these groups and these people at rallies, putting things in perspective is really important to remind them that this isn't about whether burning a flag is an effective political tool, but to think about how we can help people and reverse the crap position we've been put in.
Word. Cool. Well, if nobody has any other immediate questions, please like reach out to me, reach out to the Facebook page. We definitely want to be using this toolkit as a space for people to like bring up questions and issues. And before Danny closes us out, I just want to say that like I think that point about like how do we deal with people who have other beliefs, like what I'm seeing at least on my Facebook feed is like people are reacting to this moment in a lot of different ways. And this stance that we're really trying to hold strong on in terms of continuing to be grounded in like a progressive vision and a progressive platform and moving toward like long-term thinking, like that position in itself is going to be controversial. There are people who feel like we should only be addressing right the immediate problems that we're facing. And so I want folks to think about that, because I think like that is the tension that we're going to be in this moment. Because like if we don't, just like I think like our estimation as an organization is like if we don't maintain some semblance of what we're actually fighting for and not get totally absorbed into a reactionary moment, like we're going to lose. So I really appreciate folks like taking this work seriously and being on this call. So I think Danny is gonna close us out.
Thank you, Dylan. It's been a long year for myself and for all of us. It started off on the Bernie campaign. I saw a lot of this country, and I went around fighting the good fight. And I don't want to become one of those people that just says, "I told you so," because I was such a big Bernie guy. And a lot of my colleagues are doing a lot of "I told you so's" to the more moderate people that we know. And I think now is not the time for that. I think we want to be clear moving forward that even if the more moderate parts of the left kind of fucked us over in a huge way here, that it's behind us and we lost. And right now is the time to bring those people in and radicalize them, because the best way to get them on our side is not to be as condescending to them as they were to us. It's to bring them into these actions and get them in the streets and see how we can make real change happen. I know here in Santa Cruz, it is a weird atmosphere with the general public. A lot of them don't feel like we should be in the streets because Santa Cruz didn't elect Trump. But if people are dealing with that issue, I think that's something that's going to keep coming up throughout our actions, especially as it comes to a head on Inauguration Day. So just remind people that these actions are the only way that we're going to put pressure on Trump. And if we sit back and wait for Donald Trump to just do whatever he wants, we're going to get really hurt. And one of the more important things I think here is going to be protecting our brothers and sisters when ICE comes in, when businesses are allowed to discriminate against them. I think that the bigger base we build from here on out, the more protection those people will have. So let's get together. Let's think of some good demands for the Democrats, some good demands for our government in general. Let's keep these actions going and stay connected with each other, because right now, more than ever, all the people that have suddenly been woken up and those that have already been with us for a while need leadership. And the people on this call are the best people across the country to lead on our campuses. So don't be afraid to impose yourself into these spaces. Don't be afraid to take that leadership role, even if you don't think that you are the most relevant person to it. Just continue taking action, stay looped in with us. And, it's been a long year, and a lot of us are burned out. A lot of our colleagues are burned out. It's important that we at least give the appearance that we're not completely fucking burned out, because otherwise everything's just going to fizzle away. So, yeah, let's do this.
Word. Thanks, y'all. Have a good night.
Thank you to all my people for being on and everybody else.